Be'ez Hashem Yisborach, we begin Hilchos Talmud Torah, the third out of the 5 halachas in the Sefer Mad, the Book of Knowledge, which yesh b'chlol and shtei mitzvahs to say. In their category, there's 2 positive commandments. And these are their specifics. Aleph, number 1, Lumay Torah, to learn Torah, and Beis, number 2, is L'chabim melamdeha v'yodeha, to honor those who learn it, those who teach it, and to those who know it. Uveir shtei mitzvahs, in the explanation of these commandments, these 2 mitzvahs of the prakim are in these chapters, which there are 7 prakim. The first half, Parak Aleph to Dal, discussed regarding the learning of Torah, and Parak Hey to Zayin discusses regarding the honor of the sages and excommunication of those who disregard that. That's Rambam gets Parak Rishon, the first Parak regarding the mitzvah of teaching and learning Torah. As Rambam gets regarding the obligation of giving over of the Torah from generation to generation. Noshim ba'avodim k'tanim, women, servants, slaves, and minors, they're exempt from learning Torah. But a child of chayv l'lam the Torah. So although children themselves are exempt, but the father is obligated to teach him Torah. Shlomo says in the pasuk in the bottom, that you should teach your children, your sons, to speak in this. But the woman's not obligated to teach her son, because whoever is obligated to learn is obligated to teach. And women, as we just mentioned, since they're exempt from learning, so they're exempt also from teaching their children. Halacha beis. Just like a person obligated to teach his son, so he's obligated to teach his son's son, his grandson. Shlomo says in the pasuk, you should let it be known to your sons and to your sons' sons. Now, the truth is not only for his son or his son's son. Rather, there's a mitzvah on every single sage of the Jewish people. Allah is called to teach all the students. Even though it's not his sons. Shlomo says in the pasuk that you should let it be sharp, teach it to your sons. Now, from tradition they learn, but although it says your sons, this refers to your students. Because we find the verse says that students are called sons. Shlomo says the pasuk in Malachim Beis, it doesn't mean the sons of the prophets, these were the students of the prophets. So you see that levanecha would mean students. Now, if that's the case, so why do we have a pasuk that teaching you an obligation? You're saying that everyone you're included to teach, not only your son or grandson. That because you have one pasuk that says for your son specifically, that's because your son comes before the obligation of teaching your grandson. And that your grandson comes before your friend's son. So your son's son comes before someone else's son. Moreover, another difference is one is obligated to hire a teacher to teach his student, to teach his son. But he's not obligated to hire a teacher to teach his friend's son. That he only has an obligation to do without any financial obligation. Halacha Gimel. Now, if someone that his father did not teach him Torah, he has to teach himself when he comes to the age of recognition. Shlomo says in the pasuk in the bottom, you should learn, and you should safeguard to do it. And once what we learn from this pasuk is also that this you find everywhere. That learning is prefaced before doing. So it says and then says and the reason is because learning brings to action, but action does not necessarily bring to learning. Halacha Dal contains regarding the order of preference and regarding the payment regarding learning. So, if this man wants to learn Torah, and he has a son to learn Torah, he comes before his son. Now, but if let's say a son was very smart and understanding, to understand what he's learning, more than the father, so the son comes first. Now, although the son comes first, it doesn't mean that the father is off the hook, that he should just be idle. No, because just like there's a mitzvah for him to teach his son, he has an obligation to teach himself. Halacha Hey. Person should always first learn Torah, and then marry a woman. Because if he's going to first get married to a woman, his consciousness, his thoughts will not be clear to be able to learn. But if his inclination was overpowering him for issues of intimacy, until anyways he finds that his heart is not really free to learn, then let him marry a woman, and then go learn Torah. From when does it start, the obligation of the father to teach his son Torah? From when he starts to speak. Malam, they teach them the pasuk Torah tziva lona Moshe. Moshe, meaning referring to Moshe Rabbeinu, he commanded us the Torah. Pasuk Rishon in Parashah, and the first pasuk of Shema, the pasuk of Shema Yisrael Shem Elokeinu Shem Echad. Then they teach him a little bit at a time, psukim, verses, actually ben shesha ben sheva, until he reaches around the age of 6 or 7. Everything according to the health and the intelligence of that's opening up in this child. So it depends if it will be 6 or 7. And then you bring him to the school teacher, to the teacher of the young children. Now, if the custom of that country was that the school teacher takes a payment, so then you give him his wages, and you have an obligation as a father to get him taught for payment until he is able to read the entire Torah, the entire written law. Now, so in a place where the custom is to teach Torah that's written, the Torah for payment, so like we said, and if that's the custom, then you got to pay the school teacher for the wages for him teaching Chumash, Navi, Ksuvim. Regarding the oral law, it's forbidden to teach it for payment. Shemaka says the pasuk in the bottom. I have taught you chukum mishpatim, statutes and judgments, like Hashem commanded me, etc. What does it mean, like Hashem commanded me? Just like I learned from Hashem, for free, for nothing. So too you learn also from me for free. So too when you're going to teach the future generations, teach them also without payment, just like you learned from me. Now, let's say someone doesn't find someone that will teach him for free. So then he should learn and pay for it. Shlomo says in the pasuk of Mishneh, emes kanei, buy truth, if that's what it takes. Now, you would think, okay, just like I learned from my teacher and I had to pay, so I'm going to charge my students that you could teach others for payment. No, same pasuk says, and don't sell it. So even though you'll pay for it, but don't charge. This comes to teach you that he's not allowed to teach for payment, although his teacher charged him for the learning. Halacha Ches continues regarding the obligation of Talmud Torah in every single yid. Kol ish mi Yisrael, every single Jew, every single man of the Jewish people, Chay b'Talmud Torah, is obligated in the learning of Torah. Ben Ani, Ben Asher, whether he's poor, whether he's wealthy. Ben Shalom Beguva, whether he's complete in his body. Ben Bal Yisrum, whether he's a person of afflictions. Ben Bacha, whether he's young. Ben Shal Yizak and Gadol Shatash Koch, whether he's so old that he's weak of his strength. Even if he's a pauper that gets provided from charity, and he has to go knocking door to door. Even if he's someone that's busy with a wife and kids. He has an obligation to set a time for learning Torah by day and by night. Shlomo says in the pasuk in Yeshua, that you should think in it yomam v'layla, day and night. Halacha tes. And we actually find Gedolei Chachmei Yisrael, the great ones of the sages Jewish people, mehem from them were wood choppers, mehem from them were shoivim, water carriers, mehem from them were sumim, were blind. Even so, I don't care if they had yisurim or they were poor or whatever it is, or they were busy. They were engaged in the study of Torah day and night. And they're from those who copied over the teachings, meaning they were the Bali Messiah, from the great ones that in the Hakdam and the Rambam goes through from one to the next. These were from those, there's no excuses. Everyone has an obligation, even the greatest were busy with other things. Now, that's when is when he starts to speak. Up until when is there an obligation to learn Torah? Ad yoim moisei, says the Rambam, until the day that he dies. Shlomo says in the pasuk in the bottom, that lest you remove it from your heart, these words of Torah, all the days of your life. And moreover, any time a person is not engaged in learning, he forgets, and therefore that's considered removing it from your heart because you're going to forget by not learning. Now, a person has an obligation to cut into threes the time when he learns Torah. That is, shlish b'Torah shebiksav, a third should be in the written Torah, ushlish b'Torah shebapeh, a third in the oral Torah, ushlish in the third, yavin, he should understand, v'yaskel, and he should think about achres dava merishisai, the end of something from its beginning. V'yetze dava medava, he should extrapolate one thing from another thing, v'yidama dava dava, he should compare one thing to another thing. V'yavin b'midah shater, and the judgment, he should understand from the different characteristics that the Torah is expounded through. until he knows what's the primary principles, and how do you distill what's permitted and what's forbidden, and similar things from things which are learned from the tradition. And this idea, this topic that we're talking about, which is the third part of one's learning, Talmud, or some Gesars have Gemara. This is the Talmud, which actually this is one of the Rambams that explain how the Rambam had the audacity to say that his sefer is including all of Torah Sheba'al Peh. You need no other sefer, because the Rambam here says clearly, he answers the question over here, one of the sources, that he says you don't understand. There's Torah Sheba'al Peh and then there's Gemara. He's not including all of Gemara. It's Torah Sheba'al Peh, which is the primary principles of all of halacha that the Rambam here has in the Holy Yada Chazaka. But then there's something else called Gemara, and the Rambam never said that he's including that all. And halacha Yud Beis, as he continues, says, Ketzer, that's a house, so he illustrates this. If someone was a professional, and he was busy with his work, how long? Let's say he says, Sholosh Res B'Yom. The guy's busy with his parnasa 3 hours a day. Uvatera Teisha. Now, there's still a lot of hours left in the day. So he spends 9 hours a day learning Torah. So he says, he's not Teisha, those 9 hours. So 3 of them he should read B'Torah Sheb'Ksav in the written law. Uveshalosh, another 3 B'Torah Sheb'Al Peh, the oral law. Uveshalosh, and the remaining 3 is Mispain and B'Daita. He contemplates in his intelligence Lahav and Dav Medava to understand one thing from another thing. Now, B'Divrei Kabbalah, the words of Navim and Ksuvim, B'Chlal Torah Sheb'Ksavim, that's included in the written law. Uperushim, now in the interpretation of Torah Sheb'Ksav, B'Chlal Torah Sheb'Al Peh, that's included in the oral law. The Inyanim and the Kram Pardis, these ideas that are called Pardis, which the Rambam had explained in Hilchos the Torah Perek Dal, which is the spiritual wisdom, the metaphysical nature of the world. That's included in the third part of what's the other endless pursuit of wisdom called Gemara. Now, when do we say this, that a person has to literally cut his day of learning into 3 parts? Is B'tchilas Talmud Shalom, is the beginning when a person is learning. Then you have to be fluent and proficient in all 3. When it becomes great in wisdom, but he's not going to have to he's not going to have to learn any more the written law. Neither is going to have to be constantly engaged in the oral law. Like someone learns Mishneh Torah, he knows it already. So then then you should read at times that are designated the oral law, and the words of tradition, which are like the Torah Sheba'al Peh, that he should not forget any of the primary principles of the words of the halachas of Torah. But then then he should clear out all his days to only learning Talmud, to learn Gemara, according to the expansiveness of his heart and according to the settlement of his intelligence. Then he already knows the basic principles, and then he can be busy extrapolating one thing from another, again in the beautiful study of the Talmud. Halacha Yud Gimel, regarding the halach of Talmud Torah as relates to a woman. So Isha Shalom de Torah, a woman who learns Torah, Yesh Lo Sachar, she gets reward. Aval Inik Eschar Ish, but it's not like the reward of a man. The reason is because she wasn't commanded. And anyone that does something that is not commanded about, his reward is not like the reward of someone who's commanded to do it. Rather, it's going to be less than that. And the reason for that is because when someone is commanded to do something, they're very worried and they're in pain. Maybe they're not going to do it appropriately. In contrast, someone who's not commanded, and it's much easier because I'm not obligated. And we know the famous the Mishneh dictum of Lofum Tzara Agar, according to the pain, is the reward. Now, although the woman gets a reward for learning Torah, but the sages commanded, a person should not go and teach his daughter Torah. Because most of the women, their consciousness is not focused to the study of learning. Rather, they're going to take out the words of Torah to words of emptiness, according to the paucity, the poverty of their understanding. Where the sage says, whoever teaches his daughter Torah, as if he taught her empty words that are lacking taste. Now, when do we say this? This is regarding the oral law. Regarding the written law, initially shouldn't teach her that. But if he taught her that, then that would not be considered as if he taught her words of vanity and of lacking of taste.